Hello, 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 hello. Good afternoon, everybody on the East Coast. Probably still good morning to people on the West Coast. My co-host has joined us. Let's bring him in. There we go.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, you got the memo.
What's the memo?
Look at your hat, right? Aren't you? Oh, I thought that was an animal. Yeah, isn't that like a tiger?
Yeah, it's like tiger and cheetah mix. What you got
Okay.
on? We look at that. And the
Right?
complementary colors. Let's take it back to elementary school art class. I'm going to purple. Orange and blue. Orange and blue, complementary colors, honey.
New York Knicks, baby.
Ha! How are you doing today?
Oh, happy to be here. I feel like I got shot through that portal on
Oh my God.
2222.
Yeah, you know what? I could definitely say I've been feeling charged up. Really charged up since after
Yeah.
that portal.
My computer just like came online last night. I was like, yeah.
And my TV wouldn't work last night, so it was weird. So electronics, maybe we are the things that matter. As long as we're getting charged up, that's all that matters.
Oh yeah, I feel charged up.
Yes. Well, I'm so happy to be doing this with you. Me and Eliott have decided we are doing 5 Fridays of fire. You're going to get us 5 Fridays in a row. We're going to hit some, pretty common topics that I think everybody can benefit from. And this week we're starting off with mommy and daddy issues because, plenty of us have those, honey. Plenty of us have those. So, this was a topic that was really important for us to dig into. So I'm going to let you start us off with where you want to start with mommy and daddy issues.
You betcha. Well, I'll do a quick 30-second intro for those of you who don't know me. My name is Eliott Aronow. I'm a Libra, Gemini rising. I'm a soldier and veteran of the entertainment and fashion industries, and have been spending the past 5 years as a coach, specifically coaching men, which is why I felt like mommy and daddy issues are just something that very near and dear to me, something that I've held a lot of space around, something that I've done a lot of work around myself. And I think when I was feeling into this, I'll tell you, I've been doing a weekly men's group for about 5 years. I'm starting up a new one in a few weeks if anyone watching maybe wants to join. But one of the craziest sessions that we had was we just had mommy issues night. And it was wild to see a bunch of grown men speak honestly about their relationships with their mother, their complication with their relationships with their mother. Because I think for dudes, it is just such a taboo to speak ill of the woman who brought you into this world, And so many guys even said gosh, I hope this doesn't make me misogynistic. They were just so afraid to get into how they really felt about their moms, and I think for all of us, it is very hard sometimes to talk about this stuff, because it's we're not doing it from a place of hate, but we do have to confront a lot of really messy, uncool, uninstagrammable stuff when we're doing this work, right? Again, I noticed in the group, every time a guy said something, his tendency was to walk it back, right? I felt like my mom was domineering and never saw me and was just afraid of everything. But I love her and she's a good person. I was like, no, dude, I know you love your mom. We're not here in this space to talk about how much we love your mom. We're here to talk about how maybe some of those behaviors that you picked up are not serving you as a grown-up. So I kind of just wanted to tee it up on that front and say, maybe you and I could kind of meet that edge for all the other people out there that might be feeling some of these complications and felt like they didn't have the space held for them to really go there, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll start, right?
I feel like that gem that you just dropped right there, I just wanted to piggyback off of it for a second. I can absolutely agree with you, because even in my own journey with my parents and observing them, right? Because I think one of the things I want to add into that, and it just downloaded to me just now, sometimes we have to observe them more than we absorb them. And I think that goes to, that download came in hard just now. And I think this goes for just human beings in general. I think sometimes we have to observe more than we absorb. And I think it's really easy for us to absorb our parents because of the attachment. You know, they were the vessels that brought us through. So that attachment is going to be so much, you know, harder to break at times for a lot of people. And so in that observance, because when you talk about that pedaling back that they do, is like my mom or my dad, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I think that's that humanness in us coming in where it's like, but that's my mom, that's my dad. And the thing is that I've come to in my observance, when I'm trying not to absorb, is that we can look at our parents from a very human aspect with our attachment, and then we can look at it from a very spiritual perspective without absorbing. And sometimes at least for me, I've had to, when that but comes in, I've noticed that but comes in when I'm trying to separate the parent from the trauma. Because there's so many of us that have benefited from the beautiful things of our parents. So that I think that but comes in when we feel shame that we have had an observation that makes us feel bad, and we don't want to dishonor them, but we're trying to separate the humanness of them from the traumas that we're observing, or the dark side of them that we're observing that doesn't feel good to us.
Something that just came through for me too is like no boundaries, right? Like children have no boundaries, and children, have so little power, right? When we're little, they tell you where to go, what you're eating, what you're not eating, who you're seeing, when to show up. Don't do that, do this. And of course, you know, that's all part of the discipline that we need. But like, I think that's what's the real mind blower. Like what was the phrase that you used? You said observing, not
absorbing.
Oh, man, that is fire. Right. So it's like, we kind of need to observe now, right? The scale has to go on this side, because back then all we did was absorb.
And, right? And I think that's so important, especially as children, when we have our parents, and like you said, I've started disconnecting from the word parent so much. Not how I word this. I think a parent should be a guide, right? They're the first guides that are assigned to us on the earth side. Okay. But unfortunately, right? Unfortunately, sometimes we feel let down by our guides, because the guidance is very based on the capacity that they have, the healing that they've done. So when we are putting so much trust into these assigned guides that we've had, when the hurt, the hate, the traumas start coming through, because let's not pretend some of us haven't been on the receiving side of spewed hatred, projections, that's when these guides that we've been assigned, and we start absorbing those things, that's when it comes in. And that's when sometimes a lot of people have a hard time of knowing how to observe and not knowing how to not absorb.
Yeah. I mean, again, you know, I just keep thinking back to like sort of barriers and like needing sacred space away from our parents to kind of figure out what it all means. You know, again, I think that's what's so hard about being a kid, is that you're around these people like a lot of the time. you know, and you don't get a ton of time to just, you know, kind of be on your own and intuitively like see what's up, because you're receiving all this guidance. I mean, that's a little bit of a euphemism, you know, some guidance, which maybe can also take the form of like brainwashing, you know, and that's why, again, I think it's so important that also, sorry, quick digression, but I think this will come back. Like, the people that are here with us right now and the people that are just interested in this work, I mean, we really are pioneers in whatever you want to call this, you know, self-development, self-love, inner work. Like, our parents' generation did not have access to this, right? I mean, it was super fringe, and maybe you went to see a therapist. You know, I always picture it's like, you know, the old Jewish guy with like diplomas on the wall, Upper East Side of Manhattan, you know, sitting down on a couch. And so like, we're all like, we're at the front lines. We're at the avant-garde almost of like trying to make sense out of this shit, because our guides at the time often just had no, you know, I mean, my mom, God bless her, right? I'm walking it back. But like, she never been to a day of therapy in her life. Suffers from anxiety, probably has a lot of anger issues, you know, plays small. Not a day in her entire life. And so, again, I think what we're all trying to do in our own ways in these intentional communities, right, is like reparent ourselves.
Absolutely. And even when you when you brought up you know, having so much time with our parents, for some reason it gave me my own personal contrast with, as 12-12 as we say it, so there's clearly something there, right? So it made me think about the contrast between my mom and dad. So, you know, for those of you who aren't aware, like, my dad passed when I was 12. I am the youngest of 4 of his children. My dad was married for about 25 years in his first marriage. So my siblings that I have, they're like 60, 50, and they're 50 something. So there was a 20-year gap between me and them. And so, you know, he remarried and he married my mom. But it made me think, because, you know, my dad wasn't as hands-on as my mom, but I was more a daddy's girl because he gave me my freedom. You know, like, my dad was always teaching me freedom and detachment and making your own choices. And I personally responded to that, and I still respond better to that than being clung on to, or someone who's codependent. And, you know, I think that a lot of people can relate to that too, because I think that those are two different contrasts, where maybe some people were wishing that they had more hands-on parents. Some people are wishing they have more hands-off parents. Some of you wishing that you had the beautiful combination of both, because that's ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's deep. I mean, it definitely goes deep, because and all these, like, you know, it's so interesting, because you have all the, I don't know if you've ever looked into, like, you know what family systems are.
Dive deeper for me.
I mean, I'm like flossing like I'm an expert, but I only got into it on YouTube last month, but I became fucking obsessed with it, because it basically talked about all the different ways that we could like take on roles in the family, right? Like, one child is the scapegoat, one child is the golden child, one parent is like checked out, but like literally writes the checks. Someone else does all the day to day, right? And it's like, we just pick up all these dynamics from being in these containers. And again, you know, I think that it really affects how we show up in work and how we show up in relationship. You know, like, even what you were saying about, you know, your father was like granting you all the freedom, you know, like, my own experience, man, I grew up in a mega matriarchal family, you know, and I'm an only child. But my grandma, who lived to be 106, was really like, she ran the whole shit, you know? And I guess like in Sopranos terms, like, you know, my mom was like the underboss. She was like Silvio, and Grandma Musi was like Tony. And so all of my relating to family systems comes through a very, very, very strong feminine lens. And I didn't really have a ton of like the masculine energy to quote unquote like save me from my mom. Like my dad kind of never stepped in and be like, hey, Viv, he's a grown man. You can let him do this, right? And so it's just, man, it's even like talking about it, I'm getting so hot. You know, I'm curious for you, like where did those dynamics come up where you kind of found yourself in the middle of like where your parents were at?
You know, now when I think about it, now that I, you know, go back and really observe, you know, my parents separated in 1996. So in 1996, my mom decided to leave my dad and take me back to the Cayman Islands. And then he would move from Pennsylvania to Jersey. And then I would spend probably the next 2-3 summers before he passed, you know, flying by myself up to Jersey to go spend time with him. You know, what I can observe, and as you know, and I think this is for a lot of people tuning into, and I think this goes beyond just our parents, but just, you know, family issues. You know, sometimes we're not going to get a lot of answers in the midst of things. Sometimes things come to you in divine timing. Sometimes certain things you're never going to get because, and then if you're clinging to closure, it can be hard. But, you know, recently I was with my sister and I just passed a comment about my mom and she brought something up, you know, about the dynamic between my parents. And it brought me a lot of clarity around the dynamic between she and I, where there's a lot of codependency. But, you know, when I'm looking back at the dynamics, there probably was a disconnect with them because of a lot of codependency on her part, but then also on his part, a lot of lack of vulnerability. Because even for me, you know, in recent years, this past year, my brother passed and the conversation of my father came up and my elder sister, you know, like I said, they're much older than me. You know, she said, oh, you know, dad didn't talk about anything. Dad kept everything inside. Dad shut down. So I think that, where I came in life was for him eventually, you know, towards the end where he was very angry, he was very closed down. And maybe also too, because of the things he had experienced, maybe his parenting style was a little bit more hands off because he had also been very smothered by his very Catholic mother, you know? So I think there was always a need for freedom. And so I could see that, you know, I started witnessing, you know, I don't remember all of it, but I remember witnessing maybe one really bad fight where the police were called. And it wasn't necessarily, it was, you know, physical. It was very verbal. It was very heated. And then I remember my mom telling me that she put me in, you know, counseling at school because I was starting to get angry and violent myself. I was drawing a lot of violent things. So whatever the dynamics was that was happening in the tensions and the underweb of that house, I was starting to internalize it, you know? So with that being said, you know, moving away from my father and going back to the islands with my mom, she became the primary parent. So I would find that I think that I would very much start rebelling because although she was great in many ways, I found that where my dad granted me a certain type of freedom, I was trying to communicate that. But then if it was a no, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna still do it anyway because I want my freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your framing.
I think it's great just to air some of this stuff. You know what I mean? Because like I feel like when you have a little bit of insight and perspective on this, it does explain a lot of like how you show up now. You know, I mean, I know you have
Yeah.
a partner. I'm married. It's like a lot of those dynamics tend to show up in you know, especially in relationship. You know, because
Mm-hmm.
you're modeling what you saw as a kid and like, oh, this is like what two grown-ups that live together, this is like how they're supposed to act, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I
It,
feel for me, go ahead.
yeah, you know, because it makes me think my with even my dad giving me freedom, it makes me think how much trust he had in me and my capabilities. You know, although some reasonings of, you know, my dad giving me certain things was because he was, you know, I grew up with two disabled parents. You know, my mom was more capable to show up and go to work out of survival, but she's always dealt with many health issues. But my dad, you know, um just even when I started visiting him after they separated, like I went, you know, back in the days, like the little kids on the plane going by themselves with the plastic thing around their neck, I was so ready to be like, yep, I'm going on the plane all the way from the Cayman Islands to New Jersey by myself with this on, you know. And even when we did live with him for that short period of my life in Pennsylvania, like, you know, he would send the dog to the bus stop to come get me. We had a 150-pound Rottweiler. Yeah, I mean, like that's like one of my favorite memories of my dad was like we lived about 4 or 5 houses from the bus stop, and he would let our 150-pound Rottweiler Caesar out the back gate, and he would sit at the bus stop to, you know, carry me home. And you know, that just felt like a lot of trust. We go to the mall, he's like, here's your money, go buy your new school sneakers, go do whatever you want to do, go do your shopping and meet me back at the bench. And I'm
Oh,
like 8, 9 years old.
I'm so jealous, Trap Witch. I was
Yeah.
like, I mean, you know, there are cliches about, you know, sort of overbearing Jewish mothers, but like, you know, to be fair, I had a lot of generational trauma in my family. Like my
Mhm.
grandfather was in a concentration camp, had the tattoo on his arms. My grandmother also had her life like uprooted by fleeing Nazis. So I mean, not for nothing that, you know, my mom grew up really believing that the world was like a scary
Mhm.
place and that everyone was out to get you, you know? And yeah, dude, it's like, I mean, Halloween was like, oh, don't go out. We'll just buy the candy and you could like hang out here. They put razor blades in the
Yeah.
right in the Twix. Like someone's gonna egg you. I mean, yeah, it's. I've just had to do so much work around that shit because I see the ways in which I've played small because it was like don't be big, right? Don't be a
Mhm.
target. Everyone's out to get you. You know, I had no
You
Rottweiler.
were sheltered due to a lot of your family trauma.
Yeah, big time, big time. Yeah, I had no Rottweiler coming to pick me up from the bus stop.
Oh.
But you know, I mean, it's funny. Like I gotta say, in hindsight, like I was a little bit of like not like a mama's boy, but like I was like kind of a intentionally sheltered kid,
Mhm.
you know? And I think that's why I gravitated so much towards the arts and like music and stuff is because it wasn't like just running wild in the streets. So I could explain to my parents that I was going to a punk rock show and it was going to be here and I was driving with so and so. But like before that came in, I mean, I was really sort of on like a little bit of like lockdown.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what's interesting is when you with you saying that makes me think, you know, for a very long time, my mom couldn't let go. Do you know, like I said, codependency, being very I want to say it's more codependency than being overprotective. And I think that's where we should bring this up because people will deal with this in not only their parental relationships but also romantic relationships or maybe even their platonic relationships where you have to recognize if someone's being concerningly protective or if they're being codependent. And I remember for a very long time, um, my mom couldn't go to sleep at night not knowing I wasn't in the house, or she'd wait up and it I remember it made me so mad, to come in and be like, why are you waiting on the stairs? Why are you? But, that was also a part of her trauma, because, she said that, as a child, that was her. She was always the kid that was waiting for everybody to be in bed at night or everybody to be safe. And, God bless her heart, she grew up in a very abusive environment where her father didn't abuse them as children, but her father abused their mother. And so often, I believe, late at night in his drunken rage, he's like, who's that? He would just hallucinate, or he would project, and he would get abusive with her mother, and all the kids would have to get up, run, and flee their home because he was getting so angry. So, there's an understanding of why there's an uneasiness for, everybody needing to be in the home and being at peace and being safe. But then, it's like one of those things where we have to ask ourselves, are you holding on to something that's unhealed, that's not relevant to right now? Or is it genuinely a concern? And there finally became a turning point where she finally said, she's like, you know what, Tatiana, I just need to learn to let go, and I need to just give you over to God. And because I can't stop anything, if something's going to happen while you're out there, you can do your best, but the amount of anxiety that I feel holding on so much it's a lot. So I have to give you over to God and hope that you'll be okay.
That's big. I mean,
now she still struggles with that.
Yeah. I mean, when you were sharing that about, like, everyone has to be home and like asleep for her to feel good, what came up for me majorly, because I'm sort of in the middle of going through this with my parents. This is like a big fault line in our relationship right now, is like the ways in which parents need the children to be a certain way in order for them to be okay, and like how fucked up that is.
That's a lot of codependency. People don't realize it.
That is a lot of codependency, and that creates a very unhealthy dynamic, right? Because then we're responsible for filling this role and having to act in this very specific, narrow way just for our parents to feel okay. Especially, I'll just add a little asterisk for some Olive Garden breadstick action. It's like just a little bit for the table. It's like, especially, and I'm sure some people in the chat, let me know if this resonates, especially when they don't want to do the work themselves and then force us to be a certain way so that they can be okay. At least in your reflection, I hear your mother's willingness to change and to maybe have a little bit of self-awareness. I mean, we need to give her flowers for that. Because I'm often confronted with people who, I go to my parents, right? Like, oh, they go, I'm so depressed. I'm so anxious with everything going on in the world. It's like, there's not much to be happy about. And I was like, do y'all want to get some support? Like, do you want to talk to the rabbi? Do you want to talk to oh, no, that wouldn't help.
Listen. I mean, this is something I very much struggle with my mom at times, right? And I think a lot of people can relate to this on the chat, especially if you have like boomer parents, right?
Oh, hold on. Sorry, yeah. I just want to give it up to Fua. I love this. Parents use their guilt to trap us when they don't want to do the work.
Where? Oh, I got to
I see. Sorry if I mispronounced your handle, but right? They use their guilt to trap us when they don't want to do the work. Sorry, T, continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I want to pin that comment, though. No, absolutely. I can attest to that, and I agree with that a lot. I think, at least for me, like I said, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, my frustration, and, I just think the masses in general, like, a lot of our parents have extreme trust in the television, right? Especially news sources. where they are addicted to these sources as their truth,
Oh, yeah.
which pumps them with fear, which pumps them with worry, makes them feel like the world is hopeless, that they are powerless in it, you know. And I think a lot of times where, you know, I've recognized this, and I think tons of people can relate to, like, I get frustrated because I think a lot of that generation, because they don't know how to express their feelings, and because they haven't gone to get help, or they're not working on themselves, the way that they commune and relate to each other is often through just comparing these stories that are coming through the news or in our culture. And so they build an identity around what's going on in the world without ever really, you know, knowing themselves. And so I know I've felt extreme frustration at times where the way that someone chooses to bond with me is tell me something that's happened on the news, or tell me something that's happened through a chain of gossip, or tell me. So it's like there's no real connection or relation or learning to hold space. It's just communing through regurgitating what's on the television, and then also just giving opinions on things, but never really connecting through a heart space. And
Ooh.
you know, it's so a lot of, okay, so a lot of it is coming through now. So a lot of how they relate is through a fear space instead of a heart space. um and then also too, you know, the frustration of, like you said, not wanting to get the help, or not wanting to work through a lot of things within themselves. So then you're having to suffer the consequences of someone else projecting a lot of things onto you. And I think they project a lot of these fears onto you as their guidance, right? That's where it's a slippery slope. They're projecting these regurgitated things that are conditioning them as parental guidance. Oh no. That was that was powerful, because I think Eliott froze. Oh no. Is he still there? Okay, I'm gonna have to bring Eliott back in. It was getting too powerful. Oh, hold on.
There we go. Sorry, I
It
don't
was
know what
getting too
happened.
powerful. I
Yo,
literally said our
we
parents are projecting their fears as parental guidance, and then it froze.
yeah, it was too much. It was too powerful for. But yeah, I mean, I also love what you said. I'll just drop jump back in, but like, I love what you said about how our parents often can't connect with us from a heart space, you know, and it's so much always in the head and in like the logistics and the planning and in the fears. And again, it's not a fault, but like, you know, we really are on like the pioneering front of being able to try and live our lives and like communicate this way. You know what I mean? Because to engage with your family from a heart space is so, it's so difficult, but it's also like so much more beneficial, you know? I mean, even just to see your parents expressing emotions that weren't like anger was a big, I don't think I've ever really seen my parents express much things beyond like anger or like, yeah, I don't know, like disappointment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
You know, it's interesting. I've seen the spectrum of emotions of my mother. She's a very emotional woman. She's actually a very heart-centered woman. You know, I would say that she's heart-centered. She's actually very intuitive, but not working through certain traumas can hold back your intuition and your capabilities and your gifts. So I can observe and see that. But, you know, my father was very much, from what I remember of the, you know, like I said, I was only had him for 12 years. Like, he was a very, he hit a lot of pain, I think, with comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I only ever saw my dad get mad once at me. I can remember one time my father got mad at me ever in my life. And, you know, it wasn't even, you know, something so I would say he probably repressed a lot of emotions. Like I said, a lot through comedy, funny, you know, being the funny guy, being a charismatic guy. But yeah, I've experienced a plethora of emotions from my mother.
Yeah, my parents are both cancers, born 9 days apart. So it's like, it's hard to get that shell cracked open, you know? Like nurturing, but also like a little distant, you know? You never really got a sense of like what was going on, you know? And I notice it now, even when I talk to my dad, it's like, he has his like, he's almost like a TV host. He has his like little script. He's like, we're cool, we're moving forward. You know, like he has these catchphrases. And I was like, you're not telling me anything that's fucking going on right now, are you? You know what I mean? Like at all. No window. It's like, yeah, we're cool. It's good. We're moving forward. And then once in a while, he'll sort of, in a good way, like he'll kind of break down enough to be like, listen, there's this situation with your aunt and it is really hard for me to deal with right now. I'm like, okay, man, that's cool. Like thank you for bringing that to me. You know, thank you for bringing me a little bit of your hard experience and saying this is difficult. But yeah, again, I just think that the fault line that we're kind of all exploring here in this experience is like, we're all, as a generation, right? We're all taking so much ownership over our heart space and our feelings. And I think that when you do that, a lot of the stuff that happened in the past with your parents needs to be reparented and re-examined because we just never had the benefit of being shown what that was like. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, yeah, I was just going to say, it's like we all need to give ourselves a lot of grace because there was no roadmap. You know, this is the thing too with like in our generation, shit was so modern for our parents. It was like, I'm a woman, I work, like I don't go to church, I do this, right? Everything was like, everyone wanted to be freed from like these quote unquote things that were holding them back. The family, religion, the old ways, right? But I think within that, we lost a lot, right? Because it's like, we lost these things that were quote unquote holding us back, but like we also like we're I mean, my generation, like latchkey kids. You know what that? Do people know what that is? Right? That's like.
I think you should drop it for them.
So for all my '80s babies, latchkey kids was like when your parents were working, you went into a program after school ended until about 3:30 to basically have like I don't know. I was just gonna say yes, like an elementary school babysitter, you know, and like again, as our parents became more modern and like got out into the world, I think that we missed a lot of those rituals, a lot of that knowledge transfer from like the olden days from the ancestors, and so we're now trying to rebuild that.
Yeah, you know, and again, I think it goes back to like a lot of our parents, like our generation and before, like they were in fucking survival. You know, like they were a lot of them were in survival.
Absolutely, dude.
You know, and there's always a quote. There's a quote that says, when you're getting to know someone, ask them if they were raised on love or survival or something like that. And, you know, I would tell people, you know, I think I'm fortunate enough to say that I have experienced both. You know,
I was going to say the love within the survival. I think
absolutely.
that was it for, especially for my grandma and the way that she ran things is like, it's super fucked up out there, but like in here, it's nice.
Yeah.
You know, like within here, it's good, but like, don't go too far out of this because it's like, it's boogie down.
You know, there was something that, you said a while back that I wanted to add on to, you know, you said a lot of our parents are, I want to say exactly how you said it. How about I just say this because it'll bring back up the thought probably. you know, one of the most freeing things that my mother said to me, probably only within the past year, she finally looked me in the face and she said, you know what, Tatiana? And I've written about this before. She says, I realize you're not the daughter that I wanted. And at first I was like, what? But she said that because, you know, a lot of parents and a lot of people, you know, we have to admit this. I have to admit this within myself. I think a lot of people do this. A lot of people project onto their children who they want them to be as soon as they're conceived, or even before they're conceived. You know, like for me, like I've had people come up to me and my partner and be like, oh, you guys are going to make a basketball player. It's like, just because he's tall and he loves basketball doesn't mean we need to have a basket. You know, they start projecting these things onto their children. It's like, I had a friend one time who she hadn't even delivered the baby yet. The baby's going to model. I'm like, girl, you don't even know what the fucking baby looks like. What are you fucking talking about? You know, it's not.
What if you got a randomized ugly baby?
And that's no shade, right? We're keeping it real, right? But like putting a lot of pressure and expectation and projection onto children before they get earthside, you know, it's kind of dangerous, and that's building a lot of codependency even before they
go ahead.
Before they get here. And so when she looked me in the face and she's like, let me tell you what I mean. She's like, I thought you were gonna be a certain way. And she's like, it's not to say that you're bad, but you're just a lot different than what I thought my daughter would be. And that's a little hard for me to process sometimes. And, you know, she's like, but you're you. So, you know, and I think that what I tell people as well, like for me, my mom had a great idea of how she wanted to mother. You see, my mom was never told I love you by either one of her parents. She can't remember a day where they put her on their lap and was like, I love you. Her story is that she was always searching for love. You know, she felt like the black sheep of her family. And for me, I tell her, I'm like, you know, you say these things to me and I see myself in them, but I see my liberation from some of this understanding of cultivating my own love, but she's still very much searching for that self-acceptance that she's still seeking from her siblings or from the love that she didn't get from her parents. And, you know, I remember even, you know, her saying where she was deeply hurt that the only siblings that got that affection were two of her sisters that had polio. So it was almost in having this sickness, they were cared for more and they were more deserving because they were, you know, different. And so she had a best friend, and her best friend's mother, they had a great relationship, a very tight-knit relationship. Now as an adult, I can look back, codependent still relationship. And I remember at one point, because me and my mom, after we left, so one thing I can share with you guys is, you know, majority of my life, I never had our own home. You know, the home that me and my mom and dad moved into was just like the hand-me-down home of my grandparents. Then, you know, when me and my mom moved back, we were in my aunt's house. Then we were in my uncle's house. Then we were at the home of her best friend's mother's house. And what I started seeing was her best friend's mother faking illness or putting on a show for her daughter to come running down and to, you know, be there, be more present. Not that she wasn't present, but just more present. So I remember one time when we were getting into an argument, I said to her, I said, I need you to recognize how unfair it is to me that you projected the relationship of your best friend and her mom's relationship onto us when you never asked what I wanted. Out of good intentions, you were trying to give me more than what you had, but you're still not recognizing where the dynamics that you admire are still detrimental to my growth. Mm. So, you know, I think sometimes, you know, they say the path to hell still paved with good intentions. And I think what's so important in the reparenting work is that so many of us are trying to give ourselves the relationship that we wanted with our parents through mothering, fathering ourselves, because we get to ask ourselves, what do we want? You know,
Mm-hmm.
we have to ask ourselves, what do we need? Because a lot of our parents were just either emulating what they saw that they thought was good and, you know, just mimicking it, or they were just doing based on what they knew or just doing the best they can, which is great. But this is why being guides from a heart space is really important, and being guides from that heart space so you can recognize what someone needs. And I think for
Yeah.
someone like us who are coaches, you know, I've come to the conclusion that I am very much a mother figure in my counseling for a lot of people's kids, adult kids that felt very either neglected, unloved, rejected, whatever.
Yep.
And we're just, you know, and just as we're just mirrors, and we're just giving a lot of people the space to ask themselves the questions: what do you need to do for yourself in this life to reparent yourself, that maybe you don't have the opportunity to have that conversation with your parent,
Yep.
but you can have that with yourself.
Yep. And you can give yourself the opportunity to be seen, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy in especially in doing men's groups all these years, the energy that comes out when a guy just says to another guy, like, I see you and I'm proud of you and you're doing a good job, you know? Because I feel like so many of us, we never got that direct feedback from our parents in a way that I think felt authentic to us. Again, talking about the heart-centered space, right? Someone might say to you, you did good homework and like, I'm proud of you. But that's so different from like a heart-centered, I admire the way that you show up in the world. I admire the way that you deal with difficult things. I admire that you can advocate for yourself. Most of us never got that kind of like, we never got those snaps. And so,
I had
yeah.
a deep thought when you said that, you know, and this is something that I've told a lot of people when I'm, you know, when I'm sitting with them, but this is something I had to recognize. So, you know, the praise that you're talking about, the praise and the appreciation and the love that we, and the word validation we need from our parents. My biggest issue, and I didn't run into this just with my mom, I had this with my aunties a lot too as well, where there was this constant pedestaling and then knocking me off the pedestal. You're a terrible child. You're the best ever. You're a fucking terrible daughter. You're wonderful. I love you so. It was, and it got me to the point because I didn't realize that's emotional, mental, and physical abuse.
Yeah.
And what that can do to your mind, your spirit, that keeps you in a very codependent cycle, because you're going to always try and do your best to get the praise. So you're going to reward your parents' bad behavior. You're going to kiss their ass as much as you can so you can be the good daughter, so you can get the praise, so you can be loved on. And for me, one of the most empowering times I've had in my life, when I've stood up to either my aunts or I've stood up to my mom, when I said, I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I don't give a fuck if you love me or not. I have enough love for myself, and I know I'm a good person. So I've had to detach from them being this authoritative figure for me, and my brownie points or my gold medals or whatever trophies I get, or accolades I get for being and I think this is something too that so many people carry out into the world. You know, for me, when I started accepting myself and, you know, and I'm sure you can recognize this too, bringing myself into this space and starting to get parented almost in a way from your community, where they're giving you I'm proud of you, I'm celebrating. But still, this is where we still have to be careful about what we let parent us, because just as they say, just as you get used to the hand claps and the praise, the crowd can turn on you. So being very, very, very strong within yourself, just in this world, period, because if you already have those wounds from your parents, and then you carry that shit out into the world with how you're showing up and whatever you're doing, and I'm sure we both can relate to this. It's like, ooh, they appreciate me. They're telling me I'm doing a good job. Da, 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 da. And then the moment you don't get that shit, you're like, am I terrible? Am I not doing it?
Yeah. The reward and punishment, you know, and having to always like do the dance to be accepted, to like get the love that you deserve. You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of us do, right? We're always trying to put on the show to be like the good person, you know? Again, that's why I think like talking about some of this shadowy stuff, some of these, you know, kind of trauma bonds and like codependencies and all this stuff is so, it allows us all to just put it out in the open and see it instead of pretending that it doesn't exist. That's the other thing, you know, is that we learn a lot of fucking weird behaviors around like, we don't talk about that in this family, right? Which like becomes, we don't talk about that in this relationship, which becomes, I'm not going to tell you this at work. And it just, oh man, it creates a lot of resentment and a lot of complications, you know, because anytime something is suppressed and buried, you know, in the ocean in that safe, it's like, you know, it's going to just come out crazier and wilder the next time. I also just, I just want, I know we got to wind, but I just wanted to throw something out there to.
I think we'll be able to go over the hour mark. Let's not jinx it. If you have the time, I have the time.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. You know, I could. You know, I'm a talker.
Yeah, let's aim for about 90 minutes.
Oh, be great. I mean, I think also just something that came up really strong for me in my own work that I wanted to throw out is like this sort of like learned victimization. Right? Especially, right? Especially especially I think if we have parents that like weren't able to live their dreams for a variety of reasons, you know, like my mom would always say, it's like, it's because I'm short and because I'm a Jewish woman, like they won't see me, they won't listen to me. And I feel like just so much of that energy of like dreams that weren't realized gets kind of again, right? It gets projected on us so that we have to be the fucking savior of like, I did it, right? I did it because you couldn't do it. And I'm sure this is even more common with people that, you know, are not men, are not white, right? It's just this sense of like, this next generation is gonna like do it better, or do it because I didn't do it. But yeah, I don't know. I just was thinking out loud, like came real strong for me, like learned victimization. Let's just like talk about that for a second.
You know, this is something that's really passionate to me because I talk a lot about covert narcissism.
Oh, yes.
And I started talking about this maybe like a year or so ago, and a lot of people have a hard time with this conversation, because even like what you're talking about, learned victimization, you know, I think it's a slippery slope sometimes because it can easily go into victim blaming, which we're not. We're just going to make it very clear we're not victim blaming. But the reason why people need to really get into covert narcissism is because a lot of people who have slipped into deep victimization oftentimes can become very covertly narcissistic. And I have experienced that not just with a parent, but also a mentor who then began emulating the very same characteristics of a mother wound that I had, but it was all based on a lot of the learned victimization that they've had through their life.
Yeah. Can you like, I love this statement. Can you like crisp this up a little bit, maybe for someone that's not as familiar with the terminology? I love this. I love this thread. I just want to see if we can get it into like maybe a sentence or two for someone who, you know.
So a lot of times with narcissism, you know, and let's just get into this too, because this is a big buzzword right now in spiritual community, you know, narcissism. a lot of people, I think, just get caught up in the classical narcissism of like someone who's very showy or very egotistical, very large, you know. But covert narcissism is a lot more cynical because it can be hidden behind people who come off as very good people, who come off as, you know, like great people. Because like a lot of us on the surface, like people are like, oh, you have great parents, but it's like, but what if when you're not in the room, or what when you're not getting the text messages, or you're not, and it can be very subtle. It can not even be just outward. It can be in the way that they're emotionally manipulating, mentally manipulating, spiritually manipulating, and I found that a lot of it that I've experienced from people, and I've experienced it maybe from a client or two as well, where it's a lot of codependency, victimization, and then it gets spun. And then you get, you know, you get gaslighted. You're just like, whoa, what is this? So, you know, a lot of people definitely should hip themselves to covert narcissism, because I've personally found it's harder to deal with people who have become covertly narcissistic through being victimized in their life than just dealing with an outright narcissist. Because a lot of times you're also a lot of people who are covert like that through victimization, you're also dealing with a lot of people who haven't come to their truth, to their healing, to seeing themselves through the lens of taking accountability. So you're always probably going to be the bad person, the this and that, because there's a lot of denial that they haven't worked through.
Yeah, and like, I'm just gonna like take a beat.
Sorry, just to throw that in, because a lot of their abuse is hidden behind, I'm a good person.
Oh, of course. And again, this is why it's so hard. This is why the shit is so hard with our parents, and
yes,
specifically with the mother wound, is like, I brought you in, and do you know what I've done for you? And like all the times when you shat your pants and I came and brought you, you know, new underwear at school, or what, you know, whatever it is. It's hard to, again, it's so hard. I think that's why it's so important for us to be in these intentional spaces together where like we can work through this, because something that I talk about with my wife, which has been an incredible, gift that she's given to me, is like, you can't expect people who haven't done the work to give you what you need. Like, you have to do it on your own. It's never going to come from the parent. My mom is never going to come to me and say, you know, Els, I've realized that I've had some narcissistic tendencies with you over the years, and often erase your experiences as a 41-year-old man in order for me to like feel that you're okay. Like, ain't gonna ever happen, right?
You know what I like what you just said there? I've erased your experiences. You know what I like about that too is, you know, I can so deeply feel that erase your experiences, won't validate your experiences, won't see, you know, like won't hold space for your voice, your thoughts, your feelings. And let's not talk about one thing that I've started learning about recently. A lot of people don't know about stonewalling, and I want to pull up the exact definition so that I'm not, you know, mistaken. But when you stonewall a person, you know, you delay or block by refusing to answer questions or by giving evasive replies. So like, you know, just cutting you off, not giving you the space. Like, I've had doors slammed in my face. I've been silent treatment, you know, just like, and for me, I had to learn, because a lot of times, you know, out of wanting to fix it, because I'm a fixer, I'm an empath. I, you know, it's, oh, you're slamming the door, I'm opening the door. Let's talk about this now. And then only to be met with outbursts, tantrums, violence.
Yeah. I mean, again, all goes back to like, when people are closed off to their heart space, it's very hard for them to find happiness because they're all fucking up here all day. And going back to what you said before, you know, our parents' generation have so much trust in like institutions that like they don't realize that like the government's not your friend, right? They don't realize that like TV is not telling you the truth. And so because of that, it's like they can't understand how we might see things differently. Right? And that upsets them because when it all comes together, right? When you are viewed as being the vessel of your parents' happiness and you fucking cut off that supply, they don't take too kindly.
Ooh, you just gave me a download. A lot of our parents are looking for us to be their happiness, which is why sometimes they won't accept our truth. Because a lot of us have been brought here to be a mirror of truth for them. And so sometimes the truth doesn't always make you happy, but it makes you stronger. So if you are unable to accept that, then maybe that's why you're not getting stronger, and that's not why you're evolving. But a lot of us in this generation now, we are doing the shadow work, and we're willing to make those sacrifices to go through seasons of truth, even if we're sad, depressed, full of anxiety, to get to real happiness. That's why they're living in a lot of false security, false happiness. Okay, yeah, you have a house. And what? You don't have a home. You don't have peace. You don't have a home within yourself. They have a lot of false security.
Oh, yeah. And they raise us to always trade ourselves for that false security.
Oh,
right? That's like, right. That's like the fawning behavior, right? Where like fawning, basically for those like who just want like a 1-second description, is basically like you're so fucking nice to people and you avoid conflict and you're always the good person to survive. I mean, I am that dude. I have been that dude to a fucking T, right? And it's all because they don't have a home within themselves. So they need to get it from us. And then we, as little kids that have no fucking boundaries, are like, I love you. Let me de-escalate this, right? Here, like, let me step away from my truth because it makes you unhappy, you know? And over time, we trade this over and over again for the fucking security that we're trading that never comes. Right? This is why motherfuckers are in jobs that they hate their whole lives, right? Is because the false security of the paycheck mirrors the false security of like, oh, well, my family will see, like, as long as I show this really specific part of me, I'll be okay. But man, you know you catch hell as soon as the fullness of your expression comes into that space.
I'm telling you, you know, like
never comes. Yes, someone in the chat wrote never comes. Yes.
You know, that is why learning how to really tap into your inner self to figure out who you're supposed to be here. One of the best things that I tell people that I really had to look to within myself when I was going through reparenting is that before I belonged to my mom and dad, I belonged to God.
Whew.
And I always tell people, not to Bible bump, but one of the scriptures that really stood out to me about spiritual journeying, because whether it's, you know, Jesus, Allah, whatever, this scripture just really stood out to me. It said that in order to be a follower of Christ, you have to be willing to go against your parents, your family, and the people that you love in order to be in fellowship and to follow. And although we have, you know, I think the Bible can be frustrating sometimes because of context, and there's a lot of contradicting thoughts and ideas in there. But when I was on my beginning of my spiritual journey, that came to me, and it made me really feel like, damn, you know, even in this scripture, it's saying in order to truly go on your journey of liberation and to be in alignment in the army of God, that sometimes means you're going to go against your physical family.
Oh.
So you can't be attached. You know, you can't be attached. And so I tell people, you know, I think the problem is we have with a lot of our parents is that they look at us at not here from, how do I word it? They don't want to look at themselves as guides. They want to look at themselves as our owners. So when we start taking ownership for ourselves, that's really scary for them, because it's like, God damn, how dare you try to free yourself from me when I own you? Like you said, I've heard those words so many times. I've brought you into this world. I could take you out of it. And I want to reiterate this. I have experienced the same wound in mentorship, where when I started rebelling against abuse from another guide, it was that same attitude. And I remember it being so traumatizing because, you know, I know a lot of people feel this way. You can think about how someone who might have carried you, nursed you, held you, could also potentially want to kill you. Let's just go there. I mean, there's people who have experienced abuse here, you know, where you've been on the side of your parents trying to literally take you out.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been in there in more than one situation. Like I said, not just with my parental figure. I've been that in other situations where I think that's where I've recognized my role in helping people doing this work, you know. And I always make it a joke. I was like, I've almost died a few times through the hands of a Black Caribbean mother. Like, and if you could survive that, you could survive anything, you know? So, at least for me, you know, my fourth house is in Scorpio. And so a lot of my purpose here is not to find love from my family, which feels shitty, right? But at the same time, it's about finding that love within yourself. And so when you find that, you become unshakable. You become indestructible. If you can overcome that wound, you can overcome anything in this world. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, when you're doing this work and you're doing this reparenting work, you really have to sit with God, with your spirit guides, with yourself, and ask yourself, what am I here for? Because I had to fight. I'm telling you, the beginning of my spiritual journey, when I started awakening, I don't think I'm a very committed person sometimes. Like, if I'm honest, I'm an Aquarius. I'm very independent, very rebellious. I don't commit to things easily. When my spiritual journey started opening, there was something, and keep in mind, like, I hated church as a kid. I was one of those kids that tried to fake sleep to not go to church. My dad wasn't into church because, you know, he had, you know, Catholic guilt and, you know, Catholic shame and all that. So he said, fuck church, because the last time he went to church, the roof fell in and he was like, I'm never going back again. But when I started awakening and I started answering the call to my ancestors and to the Orisha, there was something in me that says, you need to fight for this. And when I tell you, I don't fully disclose how much I had to fight. Like, I had to physically fight. I had to verbally fight. I had to emotionally fight. Because that was something that was, my mom was like, oh no, I ain't having this shit. And in my heart, I said, this is something I have to fight for and be willing to die for, because there is liberation and there is freedom in it. And I am so glad that I did, because that in itself started changing the trajectory of our relationship and started healing things. But first, before I found happiness, I had to start finding strength. And it wasn't from my parental figure. It was from my spiritual, godly essence, externally and internally.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the spaces that we place the most importance are kind of like not ideal as the laboratories, right? Meaning our family systems, our workplaces, these are not good places to work through the stuff that you're talking about. You know what I mean? This is why, again, like on some Star Wars shit, Luke, like, you got to leave home. You have to leave what you know. You have to leave that system to dig, to get the knowledge, to receive mentorship, to like meet the right wizards and people that are going to help you to see things straight. And again, this is why I think a lot of people get fucked up in the game, is they go to places that are very bad for experimenting and think that like that's going to be what solves it. You know?
You know, and it's interesting you say that, because when I started finding myself going on the journey into Santeria, right? One of the first tasks that my mentors had me do was set up my ancestral altar. And I remember at the time, because me and my mother were still sharing a space, you know, and there was something about this altar that once I put up that lighthouse in that shared space, it just started brewing shit up. And I remember one of my prayers was, Spirit, give me a safe space to explore my spirituality. Give me a safe space. And that tension grew and grew and grew overnight and got explosive. And just like you said, you know, because I also, for those of you who might not know this, I was also, you know, a sex worker at the time. So I actually had another, it's 111 as I say this, I actually had another space in the city that was, you know, an apartment that I worked out of that was empty, you know, so it wasn't that I could never leave home. I was just here because of caretaker reasons a lot of times that would just make it easier. And so I remember as many times we had gotten into it, you know, I'd never be like, fuck this. And I remember that day I was like, fuck this shit. And I put some clothes in my bag and I took my altar, because even at the time there's a lot of spite, and she was like, you're not taking none of your furniture. You're not. I was like, okay, whatever. And I remember sleeping on that apartment floor where I worked out of for 7 days. And I want to tell you the relevance of this. I slept on that apartment floor for 7 days with nothing in there besides the massage table that I used to, you know, give my client service on, and my ancestral altar. Why is that key so relevant? Because 2 years later, 3 years later, I would go on to initiate in Santeria. And one of the first things they have you do in that initiation is sleep on the floor for 7 days with nothing besides the throne that you get rebirthed in. That's why fighting for my own spiritual journey was so powerful and so necessary, because things were not going to make sense until later on. But even in that moment of rebellion, that tension between my parent and I, that was my ancestors initiating evolution. Because sometimes when we have these conflicts with our parental figures, you know, the shit has to get explosive before there's peace. And, you know, with being sensitive to what's going on in the world right now, sometimes we don't understand war, but sometimes in order for things to evolve or have peace, things have to get worse before they get better. Mm-hmm. And I'm a strong believer of that there's magic in the chaos. Mm-hmm. Especially if we have our faith and we hold our faith, we don't know what is coming from the chaos.
Yeah, I mean, it ain't gonna happen unless you set it off. That's the thing, right? Is that ultimately, you know,
I just felt like I needed to cue Juvenile, set it off in this motherfucker. Oh.
Magic in the chaos, right?
Yeah.
Magic in the chaos. I had a thing, but it came and it went. I'm just gonna let it ride. I thought I was gonna get another breadstick, but it flew away. Where was I? That's all right.
You know, well, let's bring this in. You know, so I know you and I were talking about this too. You know, when we have, because we're already bringing this up, we have to look at the patterns that we have with our parents at times, and then we have to look sometimes how that trickles into our relationships. I know I was telling this to you, and this was only one of the realizations that I had in a few years, but I told you how much freedom my dad gave me, how much choice he gave me. And I remember I was deeply, you know, traumatized about his death for years after, because it was so abrupt. You know, it was like, damn, bro, like, how dare you just dip out and not say goodbye? And that pattern would start to materialize in my romantic relationships, where a lot of the men I was romantic with that would, you know, in full partnership with, you know, their way of breaking up was just ghosting or detaching. And I never realized how traumatizing that was for me because of how my father had left this earth. And so finally I sat with it, and it was like, my dad always gave me choice. He always gave me freedom. He taught me those things. Why in these moments can I create my own closure and move on from these situations? Why do I have to say goodbye? Because I was always like, well, this has to be a clean cut. This has to be a clean cut. I can't leave this messy. How dare you leave this messy? You know, and I remember a lot of times, and I was speaking about this yesterday, like, I would always be like, to the guys I was thinking, like, you're such a fucking coward. Why can't you just, you know, and it was making me angry. And it's not to say that I saw my father as that, because he can't help that he just peacefully, you know, left this existence. But there was just this feeling of someone not having a clean cut with me before deciding to leave my life. And that was like extremely traumatizing to me for many years in my dating. And that was definitely a daddy issue that I had, not because my dad was bad, but just because of the way that he left this earth. And that was grief. So I was repeating that same grief in all the relationships that ended the same way.
Yeah. The father wound is a tough one, you know, because it's just such a different, it's just such a different energetic and a different style, you know? And I feel like when you don't have someone to like sort of secure the perimeter, you know, it can really leave you feeling super vulnerable and almost like the invaders are going to come. You know what I mean? I think that's why a lot of the times when we have like father wounds, it's like we have to sort of learn to be like warriors again and to like defend and protect ourselves and protect our villages. You know what I mean? Because when someone does exit, often it's like, who comes in to fill that gap? Right? Either mom's doing double duty or like it never gets filled. And that's tough. You know, I even look at it, my father's still around, but I look at swaths of my adolescence where like, I don't really have a lot of memories of him being like super present with me. And I didn't really think about this until a couple of years ago when I started doing some father work, but it's like just those gaps in like, I don't know what you would call it, maybe like education and like protection. Like it takes a lot of work to rebuild that stuff, you know?
Absolutely. You know, whenever I'm working with my client to tell them, you know, you have your inner mother, you have your inner father, you have your inner child. And, you know, our inner mother, our creativity, our feelings, you know, how we nurture ourselves, our inner father, our values, how we protect ourselves, our integrity, and, you know, the inner child that keeps that sense of innocence and is constantly trying to tell these inner parental figures within us what it wants, and so that they all come together. To me, that's the real holy trinity.
Absolutely.
You know, that's why you really gotta have a parent teacher meeting with yourself constantly. Isn't that what isn't? Oh, that's a good one, right? You have to constantly come like, okay, parent teacher time. You know, parent teacher time. Come on, little Trinity, mom, dad, the kid. Let's sit down. That one tickled you.
I'm just laughing because back when they mailed stuff, right? They would mail like progress reports to your parents. And I'm like, if you weren't doing well. And I remember that one of the times that my parents got the maddest at me ever is I intercepted them out of the fucking mailbox. And then when my mom went in for parent teacher conferences, it was like, Eliott's getting a C- in fucking math. and just like shit hit the fan. So I don't know. It just,
but you know what? I'm so glad you brought this up, because why that's such a gem, the way you just said that, is that's where accountability comes in for us. Now, this is where sometimes having a really good coach or guide helps you, because sometimes we're not as real with ourselves or not as accountable to ourselves as we could be. But that's also why you have to be very discerning about who you ask to fill that position, right? Because who you ask to fill that position can have you reliving some of the same issues you've had with your parents that you don't want to relive.
100%. I mean, again, and this goes back to something that you've been talking about over the past few days, is like, be really discerning about who your teachers are, and be really discerning about the intentional healing spaces that you're entering, to make sure that you can be reparented and met by someone that's prepared to fucking do it.
You know, and one thing that I've been getting for the past few days, you know, a friend said it to me, and I've just heard it a lot, is that a lot of people see me very maternally, right? They say, oh, you're very mature. So my as a guide and a coach, I always aim to be very maternal with good boundaries, right, for myself and for whoever I'm working with, but to be assertive but still very soft. You know, I think that when we're looking at parenting, a lot of us do wish we had strong, assertive parents, but also very soft.
Absolutely.
You know, because to me, that sense of strength and assertiveness isn't coming from a place of dictatorship or a very authoritarian. It's a sense, for me, it's about self-esteem and worthiness. So, you know, as a daughter of Oshun and Santeria, my relationships, for those of you not familiar, I'm initiated in Santeria. In Santeria, why this topic is so beautiful is because you get assigned parents in Santeria. So my first parent that my head chose coming into this incarnation is Oshun. Oshun is my teacher and my mother now to help me. And then when I went through initiation, I also received Shango. So why I really enjoyed these practices is because where my earthly parents did the best that they could, these spiritual energies are here to now reflect parenting into helping me become the best that I can. And what Oshun has taught me, that I've said many times, is that my personal relationship, because I think everybody's going to have different personal relationships with their spirits. Oshun to me is very much like a stage mom. She is soft with me, but she ain't playing no games with me. Not because she's hard, but because she knows my potential, my capability, and she sees my insecurities and where they're holding me back. So she's the one like, okay, baby, I know you fucked up them sets a little bit, but I'm going to need you to get your left foot and your right foot together. I'm going to need you to put your shoulders back and your head up, and you're going to do that 3 more times for me. Thank you. You know?
Integration.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to give you a water break, but hit that 2 more times for me, and then we'll take lunch and we'll talk about it.
That's it. Like you said, I also think like the strength in not controlling, you know, this is something that all of us need to work on, is like, you can be powerful. You don't need to control everything. And I think this is why a lot of us got so fucked up as kids, is because we were always just like demanded to be fucking perfect just so our parents could feel okay. And it was like so much pressure to perform, and that controlling, that like, you know, it's like those tight fucking butt cheeks. It's like, man, you got to let it slide.
You know what? I like when we have conversations, you know, sometimes it triggers thoughts and stuff. And so what's interesting is like, for me, and maybe it has something to do with a little bit of my traumas too, but you know, for a while I was like a fat teenager, you know, I like put on a lot of weight and I got bullied, whatever, maybe because my mom was feeding me Burger King fucking twice a day, you know, in survival mode. She wasn't cooking for me. She's like, okay, Burger King, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Okay, fine. But I remember, you know, I was a good kid academically. So that was cool. but I always was rebellious when it came to boys. So my sexuality, and I was rebellious in my clothing and my expression. So Tatiana got letter. I went to private school on scholarship from 7th grade to 11th until I graduated. I got a letter sent home about your daughter's skirt's too short. It's too tight. She's cutting them off. She's hemming them up herself. Her sleeves are up. She can't dye her hair like this. Why does she have these gold earrings on? Why will she put her hair back? Why does she have so it was my expression stuff. So for me, although there were things that were coming through because of my traumas and I was rebelling to try and find myself, there was also a lot of truth that still exists until now about those things coming up, was that I was really adamant about my sexuality and also my expression not being controlled. It was one thing that she respected my intelligence, but what about the integration of intelligence, expression, and sexuality? And I think I bring this up because a lot of our parents, again, right, they can only love us in pieces. Not even just our parents, people. They only want to love us in pieces.
And like in very narrow and tight, specific, controlling ways.
And this is just this is a people issue. And I feel like, well, you know, when I'm coaching people and I'm helping guide them, you know, why I think the right guides for us are so important is that people who allow us to show up in our wholeness, in our authenticity, and again, not shrinking us into these bite-sized pieces so we can be digestible.
Well, it's part of the roles that we learn how to play as kids, right? The performance of like, I'm good and I'm smart and I listen to you and like, I'm the one, pay attention to me, right? It's like our whole lives we want that. We need that validation. And until we realize that we have to give it to ourselves, you're just going to be chasing that shit the whole time, right? Oh, hey, does Instagram think I'm cool? Hey, do you guys know this is an APC sweater? Do you like me? Right? Like, do I have enough money in my bank account to be okay now? Like, am I right? Am my friends with enough cool people? Am I spiritual enough? Like, all this shit is like us trying to take a hammer to like stop defining me in this like super narrow way. Like, I'm all of this, you know? I'm a fuck up. I'm a genius. Like, I'm sensitive, I'm strong. And I think that's what, again, we're trying to do in these intentional spaces together is stop being typecast, right? Because your life really opens up in a lot of fabulous ways when you can give that to yourself, you know?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I'm trying to find it. What week are we doing people pleasing? Is that the next one?
Yeah, I think that's week 2 next.
Yeah, because I feel like this is such a good leeway into the next topic that we're doing, because a lot of us don't, you know, recognize where, you know, people pleasing can stem from the first people we had in our life, like our family. And so, you know, when we come into spaces like, you know, Instagram and coming in, you know, just into the world in general, we can end up people pleasing to be digestible or to be controlled or not to be too much, don't take up too much space, or just be, again, right, be what people want us to be, which is not always the best thing to do.
Well, again, right, this is why coming into these intentional spaces, right, with coaches, with practitioners, is you need a lab to work this shit out, right? Because again, going back to the first top of it, I think it's good that we normalize that you can have friction with your parents, right? You're allowed. In fact, I think that when we stop fucking minimizing ourselves, that's when we can get a lot of freedom and power. Because a lot of us are so used to minimizing our emotions around our parents because we don't want them to be pissed off, or because they weren't around to hold it, or because they were narcissistic and would like gaslight us, right? And so what we're trying to do is just normalize, like, you're allowed to have all this stuff. You're allowed to have all these complications. You know? because that is a great way, at least from my own experiences. That's how I've been able to try and unwind some of that people pleasing, is just to admit that I have anger, you know, I have disappointment. Even now as a 41-year-old man, I see the way that I get gaslit in these, yeah, or we don't want to, someone just put in the chat, we don't want to hurt their feelings. Exactly. Right. I'll give Allison Rutberg, my wife, you know, her flowers here. She just said, like, they're never going to give it to you. So you got to go to other people and give it to yourself to work through this shit. They're not going to change.
You know, I feel like that's such a good one to start winding it down off of, because like you said, like, a lot of people want to do things to prove people wrong. They want to prove people wrong. They want their truth to be validated by people like, oh, you were right, or don't do anything you're doing on this earth to please people. Not even your parents.
Ain't gonna work.
At the end of the day, there's a quote that I came up with a few months ago that said, people are always going to be used as weapons to try and fuck with your confidence. This is why you have to have long conversations with yourself and God, because people are going to constantly try to distract you away from your personal power and your purpose.
Yep. Because when you start to rise up and be in your power, man, people do not take too kindly to that. When you're used to being right, yes ma'am, no ma'am, people pleasing, oh, you look so pretty today, like like, I've been that motherfucker my whole life. And now that I'm starting to embody who I really am, a lot of people do not take kindly, you know, when you're in your power. But hey, right? I wrote something yesterday for my website being like, when you raise your standards, right? Like, people are going to extend their hand to you, and it's your job to discern whether they're trying to pull you up or fucking lift you down. Not lift you down, pull you down. That'd be good. That's a good slip. Lift you down. Maybe people are trying to lift us down.
You know, I know for me, my whole life I've been trying to, one of the biggest wounds I've had is, you know, trying to prove to people that I am a nice girl, because I was always the kid that got pegged as, she's the bad one, she's bad tea, right? You know, it's like, is it because she's a truth teller, or she's not, she doesn't conform, or whatever have you. And so I think a lot of times, like even you were saying, like a lot of us, we can and I think this is going to be great when we go into the people pleasing next week, is because like a lot of times we're trying to be reserved, or not rock the table, or this and that. And, you know, I find at times having a place for, especially like your emotions, and honoring them is really important. And again, with our parental relationship, sometimes we don't have that space to honor our feelings or honor our sensitivities or any of these things. And we still have to find ways to let them go that are very constructive. And I think that from situation to situation, it's not a one size fits all. So that's why you have to be so discerning to learn, okay, in this situation, how do I honor my feelings? In this situation, how do I honor my feelings? It's different. You know, last night I cussed somebody out in my comments because they deserved it and they were trying to police me. No. But on another day I might block someone. I might not respond. We have to find out ways to honor ourselves from day to day. And with our parental figures, and again, right? People are going to trigger us because they are going to emulate the same things that happened. You know, like you could post something on Instagram tomorrow and you have somebody triggering that mother wound or triggering that father wound. They'll say the same exact thing. And you're just like, and taking that authority for yourself.
I mean, bro, like, you know, having worked in the entertainment business, like, so I was surrounded by fucking narcissists all day. And that's a big part of what that business is about, is people create teams around celebrities to basically make sure that they have no responsibility to other people and that their every need is met. right? And I was those people's fucking wingman for years. So I just want to say, if anyone finds that their boss or, you know, people that they're with are re-triggering those things, I think it's really good that you normalize that, because so many of us, we feel like the chump, right? We feel like the chump for being in those patterns again. I know we got to wind it down. I mean, geez, I could really, like,
I know we could go on forever.
We could dunk for hours. I wanted to share just a couple cheat codes.
Okay. And I'm gonna share some stuff after you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. It's my inner copywriter always wants to, like, you know, give people like 1 to 5, like some things to take away. So I just wanted to give some cheat codes. I think number 1 is, like, you know, if you found yourself minimizing your feelings as a kid, now is a great time to, like, step into that shit fully, because that is really a big part of how we take ownership. It's not so much up here. It's really saying, like, I matter, my feelings matter, my interpretation of this situation matters, and, like, I'm going to give myself space to deal with that, right? Number 2, very natural to walk yourself back when you're talking about friction or complications or traumas that you have with your parents. And again, you know, find somebody, whether it's people like us or just a safe friend, find a place to be like, we talked about this offline, right? Just like, I motherfucking hate my mom right now, and here's why. And just to even say it, it doesn't mean you're cursing them. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you really do have to walk towards this stuff and not be the nice person that's like, oh, I love my parents. It's cool, right? Like, you can love somebody and want them to fuck off, right? Number 3, just real quick, you know, once you get a little bit of the data about how it worked with your parents, it'll be a lot easier for you to see how this repeats in your jobs. You know, so much of my coaching work, like, the first day people are like, blah, 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 do I stay in my job and quit my job? And I'll be like, tell me about your parents. Like, do you feel like they believed in you as a kid? And then it's like, right? So if you see it looping in other areas, there's a good chance that it's going to come through with your parents. Number 4, this, again, Allison Ruppberg, great coach. You can find her on Instagram. Don't expect the people to give you what you need, because they're never going to give it to you, right? Your coach can give it to you. You can give it to yourself, but it's never coming from out there. You know, the people that trigger and wounded us, if they've not done any work, they're, you know, you can wish them well, but they're never going to make it happen. And then number 5, I guess, is just, like, try to have a sense of humor about all this shit. You know, I can laugh now more at my mom and dad as like an integrated grown up, because I was like, wow, you guys, like, really did a number on me, but that's okay. You know, it doesn't have to be fire and brimstone all the time. We could bring a little softness, a little humor. So, yeah, wow, this was definitely some fire. I mean,
it was.
We could have done like a 4-hour, like, digital retreat just on this, and I feel like people would be psyched.
Yeah, you know, I think what I want to leave everybody with is that, you know, a lot of people have, you know, burdens, worries, a lot of care around these situations with parental figures, right? Do your best to work through them the best that you can. Even if you can't work hands-on with them, get yourself a coach, get yourself a therapist, you know, get yourself the help that you need, because you need the space, you need a safe space to have your feelings honored. And if you can just get that out and you can just clear it out of you, you don't know how many doors and opportunities are waiting to be open for you. You know, so a lot of people are procrastinating and waiting, like, oh, when I can't get, no, like, sometimes you're going to have to do your best to get it out, have someone else validate you, validate yourself, because there's a lot of opportunities waiting for you once you release these things, so that your heart space, your mind, your spirit, your emotions can be open to better things. You know, one of the things that I learned through, you know, trying to break a lot of codependency at a lot of times. It's like, even with my, I didn't bring this up in the chat, but I feel like it's good to bring it up now. You know, the wound that I spoke about when my father passed. I remember when my father passed, in my early 20s, I started getting very angry at my brother. You know, my brother looked just like my dad. He was the closest thing I had to my dad, beyond my dad being on this earth. And so for a long time, I put a huge responsibility on him to try and fill that role, to the point where I had written him a letter like, how dare you not show up and be dad, and da da da. And so he was very absent in my life, and he was very distant, and we were very estranged for a very long time. And we still loved each other very deeply, but he was not giving me those things that I wanted. And so, you know, it was finally at a time in my life, in 2018, I was at the beach and I was looking at the ocean. And one thing I didn't mention about my dad in the live was, like, my dad was an avid fisherman. And so he spent a lot of time on the water. He built yachts. So he spent a lot of time on the water. So much that one time in 2018, I was at the beach and I was looking at the water, because there was a time when I was a kid that I remember my dad had a lot of heart issues. So his pacemaker burst from his chest, like the shit exploded through his chest. And so the day that it exploded through his chest, he duct taped it shut, because he was going fishing that day, and nothing was going to stop him from going fishing that day. This is the same man who had cancer on his ear, and he cut it off with a knife. So he was very fearless in this way. And so I was at the beach in South Carolina, and I was looking at the ocean. I was thinking about my dad. I was like, man, what made you this fearless ass motherfucker that you would risk your life to go out the day that your pacemaker burst and be on that water? And it came to me, it said the water mothered him. That was the biggest download. I said that ocean mothered him. When he was on that boat and when he was fishing, a lot of times he had peace. That's where he found his peace. That's where he found that nurturing. So I was like, Yemaya mothered him. When his mom didn't mother him the way he wanted, was not kind, or what are these, that was his church. Because again, we were talking about these deep Catholic wounds he had, because like when he was going to divorce his first wife, his mom was like, you're going to go to hell, you know, you're divorcing, like all these, you know, Catholic guilt shit. And so I recognized that the boat was my dad's church. The water was almost like his savior. Being in that space was him being in communion with God. Why wouldn't he go risk his life to be in that place for him? So, you know, what I recognized in that day, there's something that just clicked that day. And I messaged my brother 2 days later and I said, hey man, you know, if you ever just like need somebody to talk to, or you just hit me up. So I reversed the roles. Now, we still didn't talk much, but we started talking a little bit. But then what happened in last April, he messaged me and we had this whole revelation of going through like spiritual awakenings at the same exact time. Like both of us were kind of like I think like the fuck ups of the kids, like we're the different ones. And so we're like, oh man, we're like sharing angel numbers, sharing book references, apologizing to each other. And he's like, you know what? This is what he said to me. He said, look, I am so sorry I didn't honor what you wanted when you were younger about me showing up. But he's like, for what it's worth, he's like, I watch your videos. I've been to your website. I read your stuff. He's like, you didn't need me. So I say this to say, sometimes we have to create that parenting within ourselves and give it to ourselves, because even though, you know, because like sometimes what you just said is like, sometimes we're not going to get that validation. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't, but we can't look for it in the timing that we expect it. Because for me, especially, he gave me my flowers and then he passed a month later as we were about to have this new beginning.
Wow.
So sometimes we have to release these things for ourselves just so we can have our new beginnings and we can create our new opportunities, or else a lot of time is going to go by. If I look between the age I was when I was begging for that approval or for the help or whatever, versus the time I got the validation, you're talking about 10, 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's a long time to be waiting to be validated or to be helped by someone who, quite frankly, I don't, now that I recognize, couldn't help me, going through his own issues that he hadn't healed. So a lot of us are going to sometimes come back to a space where we had to do it for ourselves. And because sometimes the space that you're sharing is not going to be from you being helped or validated. It's going to be just a very safe space just to be witnessed.
Yeah.
And so I actually pulled a card for this live. So I want to leave people with this thought. And I actually pulled a Suze Orman money card, because one of the things that I find very interesting when we start looking at the essence of things spiritually, it becomes much deeper. So I chose a money card because I can always translate the message into something more expansive, to abundance. And so I think the card that I pulled is so in alignment with what we're speaking about. And it says, the courage to be rich has to do with vision. Refuse to let today's defeat block your path to the future. The type of courage is about excelling beyond your seemingly endless limitations, even in the darkest of financial times. You know, so I feel like there's so much generational trauma that we have. And we have to understand, like, people go through a lot of conditioning. And I think where a lot of us who are millennials and Gen Z, we have a lot more vision than a lot of our parents have, just because we're open. We've been in, you know, we're in the age of the internet. We're exposing ourselves voluntarily to many things. And so the abundance that a lot of us are cultivating beyond our generational trauma is about the future and about your vision for the future. So although we have to start healing things from the past, you also have to ask yourself, what kind of future do I want? And I think that's such a powerful thing, because some of our ancestors did have that concept together. Some of our ancestors were like, you know what? All I know is where we at is not it. So we about to hop a boat because we just feel that there's something better. They had that. But I think what happens is they created a foundation of security out of survival, and then that plateaus. People get comfortable and they think that's it. But I think for our generation, we know that that's just not it. That's just not where we settle. That's just not where we plateau. So, you know, whatever you guys are going through, especially with this topic that we've been talking about, you know, it says, refuse to let today's defeat block your path into the future. This type of courage is about excelling beyond your seemingly endless limitations, even in the darkest of financial times. And the word finance, I want to replace that word with scarce times, feelings of, you know, scarcity, poverty, lack. Those are the words, because I think a lot of times when we're going through situations with generational trauma, we get very lack-minded, we get very scarcity-minded, we get very poverty-minded. So you still have to ask yourself, okay, no matter where I'm at right now with these situations with my family, what kind of future do I want? And I'll leave it with this quote. There's a really good quote that again ties to finance, but again, I think it's deeper than that. It's about abundance. It says, if you didn't come from a rich family has to come from you. And when we're talking about wealth and richness, we're talking about mental, emotional, spiritual stability, emotional intelligence, spiritual maturity, not just fiat currency, not just the false security of a home or a stable job. We're talking about real ancestral wealth. So that's where I want to leave it.
Yeah, breadsticks.
Hold on, you have to explain this Olive Garden breadsticks reference to me.
It just came to me intuitively. I don't know. Maybe I was just thinking about
maybe because they get so hard they could be drumsticks.
I don't know. I was just thinking more like, I don't know, like when you're a kid, it's exciting to go to Olive Garden because it's like the fancy place. So I don't know. I guess I was just thinking about being a kid and going to Olive Garden and like the breadsticks are so good. So it's like some people give you
Oh, so
flowers.
that's one of your inner child things. I used to love going to Pizza Hut and getting those personal pan pizzas after you read them books and shit.
Oh yeah. Also Burger King, man. Woo!
Yes,
Man,
Burger King, the Burger King
you
crowns.
used to love those chicken sandwiches. My God, so good. With like that like French bread roll that's like kind of oval. Oh, forget about it. All right, cool. I'm gonna do like a 30-second plug.
Okay.
Again, my name is Eliott Aronow. My website is the same as my Instagram handle, coachingwithels.com. I work with people one-on-one. I have a couple of groups that I'm putting together. You can book a one-off. You can be in a program with me. And if you liked anything that I said, you can schedule a 15-minute consultation for free on my website.
Cool.
T,
Yeah, and
what
just
an epic Friday.
I know I'm so happy with this, like we didn't do really any major planning coming into that. I love just how the flows and the downloads came in. So I'm so excited for the one on people pleasing next week. Next week we're going to be talking about how to kill your inner people pleaser.
Woo!
And so just as Eliott said, for me, if any of you have resonated with, anything that I've said, you feel called to book a one-on-one, thetrapwitch.com. I'm here to hold space. I'm definitely recognize that I'm here to hold space for a lot of people's children, adult children at that, so creating safety for people's inner children just to fully embody themselves and be in their full expression is really a passion of mine. And if you need guidance around that, or you just need help creating an action plan towards some of your goals or towards some of your healing, thetrapwitch.com. Such a pleasure today, Eliott. This made my day.
Right? So
You got me
fun.
set up now for the rest of my calls for the rest of the day. I'm looking forward to next Friday.
All right. Sounds good. I'll see you then. Peace.
All right,
Thank
y'all. Thanks.
you.
Have a
Love
good
you.
one. Happy Friday.